migratory pattern, cultural narrative, lies, or a fantastical tale of ideology. Anonymous, June 16, 2024. In our latest letter, we aim to dig deeper into the soft tissue of IDMR philosophy. Here we will target their exposed soft underbelly and thoroughly eviscerate the believer's false assumptions and the doctrinal foundations upon which the IDMR is built. Read no further if you do not wish your confidence in the organization to be swept away like so many grains of sand. Henry Kinley brought to the world a doctrine like no other. One that could be judged objectively with verifiable evidence. Evidence that he claimed was hidden in plain sight in the book of Exodus, a pattern revealed to Moses on top of Sinai after he had led the children of Israel out of Egypt, freeing them from the bondage of slavery at the hand of Pharaoh, with the unleashing of 10 devastating plagues in the year 1490 BC. Kinley's pattern is found in the structure and function of a tabernacle that Moses was commissioned to build in the wilderness. A building that housed God himself in a cloud perched between the wings of archangels in its most holy place. Kinley extrapolates that divine principles in the vessels of this sanctuary are the physical expression of God himself, who he celebrates as the archetype, or original, pattern of the universe. This ultimately became his book by the same name, mailed to the world as a witness of his incredible vision and revelation. Another startling insight from Kinley's supposed vision is that this pattern is witnessed not only in the tabernacle, but in the migratory trek of the children of Israel from Egypt to Canaan's land, which he also calls the migratory pattern. These two patterns, which are both examples of Elohim, stand as verification of each other, and Kinley meticulously teases out repetitions of various principles, which we will not expand upon in detail here. The result of these insights was the formation of the IDMR, its constitution and aims, decades of lectures, graphical charts, and a litany of claims that will certainly be familiar and ring true to any IDMR believer in these statements. I can prove the divine authenticity, unerring accuracy, and absolute infallibility of the Bible. This is not a fantastical tale of ideology. For the first time in your life, you have something you can believe in, something that is true, something definite, sure, and concrete. There is one extraordinary problem with all of this: there is no historical, archaeological evidence that Moses even existed. There is no verifiable proof that the children of Israel were ever enslaved in Egypt. No evidence that there was an extraordinary exit from Egypt after the unleashing of a series of devastating plagues. To the untrained, this may not seem so strange. These events happened nearly 3,500 years ago. How could we know for sure that these things didn't occur? It's not like there are newspaper archives or news footage from that period, so maybe the Bible is a good enough source, since the records of ancient history are probably sparse, thin, and unknowable. Except they aren't. The archaeological evidence from the period that the Exodus supposedly happened, 1490 BY, is extraordinarily detailed. This was the New Kingdom in Egyptian history, and this era has some of the most detailed records imaginable, many of which have been recovered from private tombs and temples. Some examples of the types of things we know and have detailed records for include urban planning, including the layout of cities, residential areas, temples, and government buildings. Daily work and occupations. We know many details of the trades like sculptors, painters, and craftsmen, including their wages, work schedules, and even have records of the first worker strikes. Trade and economy. We have incredible records of trading and trade networks, international relations, and politics. Medical texts. Details on treatment plans, surgical procedures, and healing practices. Details of religious festivals and ceremonies. Military campaigns. Tax records, census data, legal contracts, and correspondence. Numerous literary texts. Here's the $64,000 question: how would it be possible that the entire land of Egypt was completely devastated by plagues, including one where every single firstborn son of the land was killed on the same night, and no one wrote it down? How could it be that not one tomb has been unearthed of a person slain that fateful day? Especially when we are told the Pharaoh's son himself was among the dead, along with many thousands of nobles and powerful, wealthy people. If one is to assume that Egypt, through conspiracy, hid the records of these events out of embarrassment, as is sometimes stated, Why would there not be any records in the preceding decades of a foreign slave population numbering in the millions, as is asserted in the Bible and by IDMR as having been in Egypt? This is just not reasonable and defies all logic and available archaeological evidence. The truth is that many in IDMR, and in other religions as well, tend to look away from these glaring inconsistencies. The reason for this is obvious. It's just not polite to question the truth of one of the world's most recognizable religions, and one that gave birth to a much more successful ideology in terms of numbers: Christianity. The Exodus is a foundational narrative on the origin of an entire people. It is fundamental in providing meaning, purpose, and identity. It's a story that organizes and forms the basis for their common history. To question its validity is to undermine their existence. Yet, when we understand it from this lens, we can still understand it as valuable narrative, even if not historically accurate. This brings us to the challenge of Kinley using these stories as the basis for understanding the universe and its origins. Kinley asserts that the events recorded in Exodus are historically accurate and the means by which God revealed himself and his name to mankind with great fanfare. Only by accepting their historical basis can you then reach the conclusion that these events are the revelation of a divine pattern of the universe. Kinley begged us to make him prove it, his vision, until we are satisfied, and further stated that if he could not prove it, we were not obligated to believe it. To this day, many are told in IDMR's lecture halls that no one has successfully refuted the teaching of H.C. Kinley. With this letter, we resolutely dispute this claim. The teaching of IDMR and its core foundational principles are built on a fictional narrative, on events that did not occur, and were manufactured simply to provide an origin story for a nation. Let us be clear. An enslaved Hebrew child was never raised as a prince of Egypt. The tribes of Israel did not build the pyramids or Pharaoh's treasure cities. The Red Sea did not part to make way for 3 million slaves escaping Egypt on foot. And nor did it collapse on an impetuous king chasing them down after losing his son to the vengeful actions of a death angel. Kinley has sought to capitalize on these narratives and to show principles that he says prove the irrefutable nature of the Bible, and by proxy, his divinity. Yet, when it is understood that these were not historical events at all, but manufactured stories, it's much easier to see how these ideas were woven into a narrative by design. Universal principles such as freedom, sacrifice, life after death, and overcoming adversity come together in an inspirational and spellbinding tale full of supernatural mysticism. Many of the divine principles of Kinley's migratory pattern are nothing more than the grand inventions of story. And, as he so eloquently framed for us, offer a fantastical tale of ideology of epic proportions. May you now be set free from the spell of this narrative and the false premise of the relevance of arbitrary correlations on charts and Bible stories.